Wanted to take a moment to thank Leonard Donato for the super thanks, to acknowledge Adam M, who recently joined my Patreon, and Greg, who bought me a handful of coffees. I really appreciate you all. If you are able to give a contribution via super thanks, Patreon, or buy me a coffee, you'll receive a shout out from yours truly. Links for those methods of support will be below. Easily one of the most entertaining and charismatic players in the league, David Pastrnak has been lighting the lamp for Boston for quite some time now. And it's been during that time, and even prior to, that Pasta has formed some bonds along the way. In this video, we'll be going over a handful of NHL players that Pastrnak loves. And with that, here are 5 players that David Pastrnak loves. When Pastrnak made his way to Beantown for the 2014-15 season, Zdeno Chara, who joined the team in 2006, was an integral part of the Bruins lineup. Since Pastrnak spoke the same native tongue as Big Z in Slovak, this likely allowed for a bromance to easily form between them. Humorously, according to an article from Nesson, Pastrnak at first was a little intimidated by the defenseman, who is nearly 7 feet on skates. He's kind of scary. I talked to Zdeno, and he's here to help me whenever I want. I said thanks for that, and all of the guys who want to help me out, he says. After playing with Chara for nearly a decade, Pastrnak was forced to adjust to the fact that his former captain would be suiting up in Washington. And it just so happened that in the postseason of 2021, Chara ended up facing his former team. Following Boston's defeat over Washington, things for Pastrnak became emotional once Chara came through the handshake line. Later, Pasta spoke about what Chara meant to him post-game. Zdeno is a guy who helped me grow up as a person and especially showed me how to be a pro. It was a little emotional, but I can't wait to catch up, and I hope to see him back home at the end of this. The emotions were high, and I can't thank him enough, Pastrnak says. In case you all weren't able to catch the William Nylander bromance video on this channel, well, let me just say that his and Pasta's story is rather unique. Since both players are very close in age, they were in the same stage of their careers when they first met in Sweden. As they began both suiting up for the same team, the pair actually played on the first line and formed chemistry together.
I'm Pastrnak, and this is my line mate, Burch and William Nylander.
They also naturally formed an enviable bromance off ice as well. Since Pasta didn't speak English back then, Nylander recalls their interesting former method of communication. First, I think I said hi maybe in Swedish, and then he didn't say anything. And when I said hi in English, he says, "We tried to talk all the time, but I had no English," Pastrnak says. Therefore, the duo began using Google Translate as their means of talking back and forth. Obviously, today, since Pastrnak has learned English, they're able to converse with much less effort. Interestingly, Nylander, who started out with number 29 with the Maple Leafs, ended up changing his number to 88, the same number that Pastrnak has been wearing for the B. Torey Krug, who made his way to the Bruins undrafted, made the roster around the same time as Pastrnak was having his debut season. Krug, who played his first full season with the B in 2013-14, was kicking off his sophomore season when Pasta was competing for the Calder. Over time, as they both rose through the ranks in the lineup, Krug and Pastrnak became core pieces in Boston's power play that dominated. Obviously, it still is, but before he was traded, Krug was known as one of the best D-men on the man advantage. And while they weren't clicking during regulation, Krug and Pastrnak developed their signature pregame ritual that NHL fans couldn't get enough of. Once Krug signed in St. Louis, he agreed to become best friends with Robert Thomas, jokingly, following a confrontation between them in the postseason prior. Pasta, just hours after, tweeted a message that conveyed everything without a single word. Since the Blues didn't have the opportunity to play in Boston until last year, it wasn't until April of 2022 that Krug was welcomed back to TD Garden. But before the tribute commenced, Krug had some catching up to do with a former teammate. Their first name, country of origin, and the NHL team they play for. David Krejci and Pastrnak naturally have a lot in common. By the time Pasta emerged in Boston, Krejci had already established himself as an important part of the Bees lineup. They not only connected for the Bruins offensively, but also at the international level as well. Most recently, the pair was instrumental in helping their country take the bronze level status in the 2022 IIHF World Championships. And when the veteran decided to return to his longtime team this past fall, he revealed two players that helped make that happen. I have to give credit to Bergie, him and Pasta. We had so many conversations the last few months about coming back or not. They're the reason I want to go back and play with those guys again, he says. Who wouldn't want to play with one of the best players in the world? I was lucky that I got to play with him on the same line at the World Championships. That was kind of my turning point in my decision to come back to the NHL. Just playing with him and seeing what we can do together. I have a feeling most of you knew this one was coming, as Brad Marchand and Pasta have been one of the most productive pairs over the years league-wide. According to a video done by the NHL in 2019, the duo was the highest scoring pair in the Eastern Conference at that time since 2016-17. Also, Marchand at that point had assisted on over 1/3 of Pasta's goals, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. But Brad's not just here because he has on-ice chemistry with number 88, as the two have had an enviable bromance for quite some time. Highlights include Pasta piggybacking in China, their hilarious back-and-forth banter on Twitter, and Brad chirping Pasta while complimenting him right before a Game 7.
First off, absolute man rocket.
Hi.
And two, look at the meal. No wonder he's cut like a Greek god.
Healthy. It's all about healthy food.
Game 7, ready to go.